solo episode of my podcast, Aaron Sneeze POV. I actually recorded this yesterday. I recorded the whole thing, and I never had this switched on. Never had the mic switched on. So I decided I'm just going to come on live and do it. The whole plan behind me even starting a podcast is to help educate people on nutrition science, basically nutrition and training science. So a large part of it is going to be me doing solo podcasts, and I kind of want these solo podcasts to turn eventually into live Q&As as well. So if anybody is watching this, if anybody does click on it and does watch it along for a bit, then feel free to ask any questions, because they should come right through to me on the platform that I'm using. I'm actually just a way to double check this is live, because it came up, there was an issue there, so. Yep, so it does look like I'm live, so yep, let's go. So let's start that again. So, hi guys. The plan with starting this podcast, as I said, is to do a lot of solo podcasts. The plan is to help educate people on nutrition science and the truth behind nutrition, really, because there's so much misinformation out there. Training as well, but the focus of it will be nutrition and lifestyle. So as much as I do want guests on every week, and I do want to eventually turn it into a live guest show as well, a large portion of it is going to be based around me doing solo podcasts to help sort of educate people. Because there's so much to nutrition that there's not sort of a one size fits all for approach for anything. I'm a big believer in different styles in nutrition. I'm a big believer everything works. Every single thing works. Low carb works, high carb works, tracking your macros works for fat loss. And there's a big difference between eating for performance, eating for health, eating for physique. They're all different things as well. So that is why there is so much misinformation about nutrition in general. It would be a lot easier for me, although I'm a nutritionist, so I see things from an evidence-based perspective, and I see that there are multiple ways to achieve the same result. There are multiple diets that people could thrive and live a long, healthy life on. There is no one size fits all, but a lot of people are trying to sell people a system, whether it be low carb. Now I'm a fan of low carb diets, or whether it be plant-based, or whether it be whatever. People try and fit themselves, especially in this day and age with the internet, people try and fit themselves into certain niches to sell a certain thing. That's why you'll have people like carnivore people, keto people, and it almost becomes a religion for them. Their style of nutrition they like to follow, it almost becomes religious, as I say. So I actually do have a guest on, James Collier, in a few weeks, who's wrote a book called Well Fed. I've listened to the book once and kind of started partially through it again, because that whole episode will centre on his book, but a lot of it is sort of similar to the stuff I kind of fell in love with at uni. A lot of it's to do with the food and behaviour and why we choose certain foods and things like that. And he refers to this as something called dietology. I'm not actually sure if it's his own sort of take on it, but it almost becomes a religion when people are so blinded by keto, or so blinded by plant-based, or so blinded by a certain dieting strategy that he calls it dietology. I've not actually looked into it if it's actually a thing or if it's just his term for it. But it's true. People become almost religious about the certain dieting strategy that they've used. Whereas I don't look at things like that. I look at things as situational. It depends on what you're trying to achieve at that moment in time, and even with that, there will be multiple ways of doing things. So, today I'm going to focus on a subject. It's actually in nutrition science. It's called G-Flux, energy flux, high G-Flux diet. It's basically it's based around the premise of eating more and moving more. Like everybody says when you start a diet, everybody says when it comes to diet, eat less, move more. There's even a whole movement on TikTok started about that, like skinny talk. It's absolutely ridiculous because weight loss in general is so complex. The reason people are overweight, the reason the country has an overweight and obesity problem is so complex. It's like to do with our environment. We live in what's called an obesogenic environment. It's a consumer-driven environment. And when you are shopping, it's designed to get you to overspend and overconsume on tasty junk foods. So that is one aspect of it. It's such a complex issue that if the advice of eat less, move more, if that worked, then we wouldn't have an obesity problem, we wouldn't have an overweight problem in the country, and we do. The advice simply doesn't work. Now, for most people starting out on a weight loss journey, for example, that is the crux of it, probably, to begin with, for most people. Because if most people aren't used to training or doing a lot of activity, they'll be starting from zero. And if they've not been paying attention to what they eat, they'll be starting again from a clean slate. So the first thing to do there would be to establish some kind of better eating habits and moving more. But that would be the very first point of call. What high G-Flux dieting is the opposite. It's when you purposely increase your food, increase your calorie intake to support an already high activity level, or purposely increase your activity level. It's when you purposely eat more and move more. What happens is your metabolism starts to turn over faster. So this is perfect for people that have maybe been on, I don't know, dieting for a while and they've lost a lot of weight, and they're at the point now where nothing seems to be working. They're on really low calories and they don't seem to be losing much more weight. And they're doing a lot of activity as well, and they feel like they're just kind of burning the candle at both ends. This would be a sort of good time to go, right, I'll start increasing my calories, start trying to get my metabolism going again. So it's kind of the position I've found myself in recently as well. I've lost about 15 kilo since last summer. I let myself get far too out of shape. I've lost about 15 kilos since last summer, and gradually what I'd done was, I've always liked to run. I've always liked to, they call it hybrid athlete training these days. Like, it's just the way I've always trained. I think from being into martial arts when I was younger, I've always liked to lift weights, but I like to run and do endurance stuff as well. So, but during this whole year of focused weight loss, focused fat loss, I actually pulled the running out, because what happens is running and hard endurance training like that is so energy demanding that it drives your appetite up. So trying to stick to really strict calories and things when you're doing a lot of that type of thing, that kind of counter, anything for me in the past anyway, they kind of counteract each other, and it drives my appetite up too much. So what I decided to do was pull all the endurance training out and just basically focus on a diet and lifting. I've been doing cardio as well, but just what bodybuilders would class as cardio, just walking or light cross trainer stuff. So gradually throughout this past 9 months or so, I've been doing like a diet phase and then a diet break and then a diet phase. So gradually, bit by bit, my calories have got lower and lower and lower. Plus, I've been doing keto for a large portion of that, a cyclical ketogenic diet. So I've been doing low carbs for a few days with 1 or 2 days high carbs at the weekend. And I just got to the point there where nothing was moving. About 4 weeks ago, nothing was moving. I was losing about a pound every 3 weeks or so, and my calories were like, to even achieve that, my calories were way down at like 1600, and I was just burnt out. I couldn't keep up with the training. I couldn't keep up with the training that I was trying to do, and I just felt burnt out, and I ended up getting like ill. I ended up getting well a couple of weeks ago, so I was like not well for a couple of weeks, and I purposely had a diet break the week before, so I purposely decided to increase my food slightly, and my workouts were terrible that week, and then I had 2 weeks of being ill, and then last week was just kind of trying to get back into it. But so what I've decided to do is approach my diet from this high G-flux sort of angle. G-flux is a technical term for it. So I will now be increasing my food, but over the coming weeks I will be really severely increasing my activity as well. So what the goal is there is to try and get my metabolism out of that sort of sticking point that it was at, where I just have to keep driving my calories lower and lower and lower for not really much return. And in turn, what happens is you get run down and you end up getting ill like I did. So my approach over the next few weeks is going to be, as I'm reintroducing the endurance training, I will be slowly reverse diet and slowly increasing my calories as well, until I get to a point where I feel like I could diet again. So how does all this work? Like, what's the sort of theories behind that? Well, when you are on prolonged periods of low calorie dieting, that's what's drilled into people. It's just eat less, move more, and people take that aspect of calories and calorie deficit as far too literal. So what people think is the less they eat, the better. Now, what happens when you are going through a prolonged period of low calorie dieting? That your body's a highly adaptive machine. Your body basically adapts to any stress you put on it, and reducing your calories and dieting is a form of stress. You're trying to force your body to adapt to stress, and it's the same as training. Exercise is what exercise is. It's stress, and then your body adapts to the stress and becomes bigger, stronger, faster, whatever it needs to be. But during this period, when it comes from calories, this period of low calorie dieting, what happens is your metabolism adapts. It's called adaptive thermogenesis. You've probably heard me mention it before. But what happens is your metabolism starts to slow down. The amount of fidgeting and stuff that you do, it starts to slow down. Your body just tries to conserve energy, tries to slow down the weight loss. It doesn't stop it completely. So when people say about you're in starvation mode, you can't lose fat, etc., it's not entirely true, but it's kind of a half truth. This is where that comes from. So what happens is your body fat is stored there as emergency energy for when you need it. So when your body thinks it's getting starved, your body starts to want to hold on to that. Like, it doesn't hold on to it completely, but these are some of the things it does to try and slow it down. So one of the things it will do is it will reduce your NEAT, which is non-exercise associated thermogenesis. So NEAT is anything like me, like tapping my hand on the table or fidgeting, moving my leg or whatever. Now, when you're deep into a calorie deficit and you're starting to feel really tired, fatigued, that's what your body's doing. It's turning down all this subconscious activity that you do that would naturally burn calories, and it's just a way of trying to conserve calories. Basically, it's just a way of trying to conserve energy. Also, your basal metabolic rate will drop through periods of low calorie diet. Your basal metabolic rate is the amount of the amount of energy you need to stay alive at rest. So if you were lying down all day, your body's still going to burn a certain amount of calories just keeping you breathing, keeping you as your basal metabolic rate. Ideally, you want that to be as high as possible at all times. But during periods of low calorie diet and prolonged periods of low calorie diet, that will drop as well. Cortisol, stress hormone, starts to increase the further you get into dieting as well. Now that's a whole other conversation in itself. I'll maybe go down that rabbit hole another time. But also your thyroid hormones decrease as well. So thyroid hormones are directly involved in metabolism. So when your body starts to produce less of these, your metabolic rate drops as well. Also, severe dieting in men could cause your testosterone to crash if you are if you're not on testosterone, and in women it could cause estrogen, progesterone, it could cause a decline in the hormones as well. Ultimately, this sort of creates a perfect storm for people to lose muscle as well. So all these things individually play a role in your metabolism slowing down slowly. And if this leads to muscle loss, again, muscle is metabolically active tissue. So if it leads to muscle loss, once you lose muscle, your metabolism will slow further. So as much as if people are inactive, to begin with, you do need to sort of heed that terrible advice that eat less, move more. It is kind of the way to get moving. But after months of being in that position and months of continually trying to drive your calories lower and lower and lower, especially if your activity is going up at the same time, you will eventually run your metabolism into the ground. So what's an alternative? That's where G-Flux come in. High G-Flux, high energy flux. So it's high energy intake and high energy output. They both things together increase a lot of systems and processes in your body and ultimately increase your metabolic rate. So more food, more movement basically. So why it works, what's the science behind this working in comparison to low calorie diet? And obviously when you're low calorie diet and you're taking in less energy, which is forcing your body to release your stored energy, your stored body fat. So why the sort of premise behind this working is it's a higher, because you're eating more food, there's something called the thermic effect of food. And when you are eating more food, your body, right, I'll start again. It works on the premise of a few reasons. One of these is the thermic effect of food. When you eat anything, your body burns calories just to digest that food. So that is called the thermic effect of food. So in theory, the more food you eat, the more calories your body will be burning just to break down that food alone, without doing anything else. Also, I explained about your body reducing the NEAT, non-exercise associated thermogenesis. When your body reduces that to conserve energy, it also could work in reverse. So if you're eating more food, you'll have more energy to be moving more, and you'll just subconsciously fidget more, you'll subconsciously get up and do more housework and things like that, because you've got more energy in and you're feeling better. Also, the more food will allow you to train at higher training volumes, so you'll be able to do higher volume weight training in the weight room, and you'll be able to like cope and recover from adding in running and endurance training and things like that. Higher energy intake also protects lean mass. So I mentioned that when you lose muscle mass, your metabolic rate will drop. That's a protective mechanism. By moving more and eating more, you're again trying to offset that potential of losing lean mass while you're dieting. And it keeps your metabolic hormones such as thyroid hormone, etc. It keeps that ticking over. A drop in carbohydrates specifically normally sees a drop in thyroid hormone. So if you're taking in more energy and more carbohydrate, you will be keeping your hormones in a more sort of favourable balance for weight loss. So how do you set that up? Well, as I've been saying, I would say it's a perfect switch for people that have been prolonged in a period of prolonged dieting. and they've gradually been bumping up their activity, and they just feel like they're at a sticking point. This would be the perfect opportunity to sort of change over into this style of dieting. But it would be some basic, like start with movement, some basic sort of parameters to set are like 10 to 15,000 steps a day. Make sure you're training 4 or 5 days a week with weights, like hard with weights, training hard sessions and some conditioning. Incorporate NEAT throughout the day, so just make sure you're constantly on the move instead of laying about on the couch and things, when you're hard dieting, that tends to be what you want to do. So, and then fuel yourself with as much food as humanly possible. Try and get your calories up to near maintenance, whatever that would work out at for you. Focus on protein, fibre and micronutrient dense food, and focus on fueling your performance rather than just focusing on weight loss. That's what I'm constantly saying to people. Yeah, not everybody, but a lot of people start their journey looking for weight loss, but ultimately once they start losing weight, they start to realise that it's not just the weight loss they want, it's the ability to have an active, healthy lifestyle that they were looking for in the first place. So who's this style of dieting great for? It is great for women in perimenopause and menopause, because your hormones, women in that situation, their hormones are already all over the shop. If you're adding extreme diet and extreme calorie restriction on top of that already hormonal chaos, then you could potentially worsen how you feel, and potentially make it harder in the long run for you to get weight off. It's perfect for men or women with metabolic slowdown. So as I keep saying, for people that have been at that stage of prolonged dieting for a while and they just feel like they're stuck. I think a lot of people enter into a weight loss journey with the impression that it's just foot down and go 100 miles an hour till you hit your goal. If your goal's quite a bit away, if you've got quite a lot of fat to lose, it can't be done in one go without burning out. You have to push and pull. You have to push for a few weeks and then have a diet break, and then push again for a few weeks and have a diet break. But then ultimately there will come a point where your body just keeps fighting against you. So having a period of focusing on performance will, and the funny thing is, during this period you probably still will continue to lose body fat, and you'll probably like the changes you see in the mirror better during a phase like this than just focusing purely on the scale and weight loss. It would also be perfect for anyone coming out of long-term dieting or low energy availability. There's a thing in athletes called REDS, Relative Energy Deficiency Syndrome. Now, essentially, that could happen to normal people as well. If you're that dieted, if you've been dieting that hard that your energy levels are tanked into the ground and you're not seeing any weight loss, then that is what the problem is. You need to get that. You need to get the systems, your bodily systems, your metabolism and things moving again. And this is kind of the only way to do it, is by starting to purposely overfeed, not overfeed, purposely bring your food back up to around maintenance or slightly above, and continue to really push your activity levels high. So, hormones and high G-flux. As I said, like when I was on about everything down regulating, this just basically helps stabilise everything. With the extra food going in and the extra activity, this would allow your thyroid hormones to stabilise. It will allow your body to feel less stress, so your body won't produce as much cortisol. Testosterone and growth hormones should be at max output because you're not running your hormones into the ground, and the same with estrogen, progesterone in women. As I keep saying, like, stress will cause your hormones to tank, and dieting is a stress, training hard is a stress. Now, when you're trying to do both of them at the same time, it'll maybe work for small periods of time, but essentially you're burning the candle at both ends, and something will give. Whether you get injured or whether you get ill, it's normally one of the two ways it'll go, be it injury or illness. So, as I say, how my approach is going to be just now is I'm taking the kind of hybrid athlete approach. The term hybrid athlete come from a book that Alex Viada wrote. That was certainly the first time I'd ever heard of it. It's called The Hybrid Athlete. But in his book, he defines a hybrid athlete as somebody that's trying to excel in two or more disciplines at the same time. So a lot of the hybrid athlete stuff is sort of geared towards performance rather than physique. And the way it's laid out in that book to sort of balance is to set yourself a calorie baseline diet. So when you're setting that up, take into consideration your weight training sessions. So your 4 or 5 weight training sessions per week, take that into consideration into your baseline diet. Any additional endurance training or cardio you're doing on top of that, don't take that into consideration. What to do is, on your long bouts of endurance training, is to record it on a calorie tracking app, on your Garmin or Apple Watch or whatever you use. Record the calories burnt, and then in the book it says to eat 110% of that back. So if you've burnt 1,000 calories, then eat back 1,100 calories, and that will keep your diet, it'll keep your energy levels topped off to continually improve performance. And if you want to lose weight at the same time, then that should be factored into your baseline diet. So if your baseline diet is factored in to being in a slight calorie deficit, for example, when you eat the calories back, it shouldn't matter because you're still in a slight calorie deficit. So that is the way I'm going to approach things over the next wee while, simply because I've ran myself into the ground, and that's been 4 weeks of pretty poor training off the back of it because of that. So I'll do more updates on how it's going, how I'm feeling and things. This is just the first week of really reintroducing running, so it's probably going to be a while before I get back to long runs and things, because I've not done it for about a year. I'm just going to build it slowly, build my endurance training slowly again. So yeah, I'll come back on and keep people updated with how that's going. But as I've said in the past, I'm a big fan of keto diets and things as well. Like, I'll probably end up doing that again in the future. But the reason that I'm coming away from that just now is because anytime I've tried to do a lot of endurance training on a low carb diet, it's never worked out very well. Now, maybe that's just the fact that my fats and my calories weren't high enough at the time, possibly, but it's never worked out very well for us in the past. So I'm just kind of going back to what I know for a bit, and then I'll maybe drop back into a keto diet later on in the year. I'm going to do a few of these episodes live over the next few weeks, and I'm going to cover sort of basically the pros and cons of different diet and styles. So the pros and cons of keto, the pros and cons of carnivore, the pros and cons of just tracking macros, etc. But I would really like these to turn into slight Q&As as well. So if anybody's got any questions or that they would like me to address when I'm doing these lives, just drop us a message, and I'll sort of address it in the next live. But the next few that I'm doing solo will be sort of going over, what's the word I'm looking for? Different dieting styles. Popular dieting styles, that's the word I'm looking for. So popular dieting styles, we'll go through the pros and cons and sort of situations when you would sort of want to use each one. Because as I say, I look at nutrition as situational. There are situations when low carb diets will work. There are situations where people would be better tracking their macros and eating meal to meal. I'm not a fan of that myself because I'm not really good at it. But people with families and things like that, it maybe suits them better to have a lot more leeway in their diet. Now, there is no one size fits all. For people to sort of live a healthy, fit life, you kind of need to figure out what works for you. What works for you, there is no one size fits all, and in different situations you could use different strategies as well. Whether if you want to improve performance, if you want to improve body composition, if you want to solely focus on body composition, you would maybe use a different approach than if you want to improve performance and maybe slightly work on your body composition at the same time. So yeah, as I say, there is no one size fits all, and I'll just double check the notes, see if I've missed anything. Yeah, so final thoughts. You don't need to eat less forever to stay lean. Now, I see so many people struggling with this as well. It's like if they believe, and it's more women than it is men, it's like if they believe if they've, like a number I see a lot with women is 1,200 calories. They believe that they need 1,200 calories to lose weight. Now, we'll just use that as an example. Now, women will convince themselves that if they need 1,200 calories to lose weight, they need to stay on 1,200 calories forever to maintain weight. That's not how it works. When you're trying to maintain your body weight, you need to increase your calories to maintenance. And people really struggle psychologically to get their head around that. Coming at it from a high G-flux approach would be a way of looking to try and increase your metabolic rate. Now, I must stress though that this only works when your output is really high as well. When you're training like an hour or two most days a week, this is when a high calorie diet and approach would work, because they both work together in speeding up your metabolic processes. The higher food intake and the higher output. You can't just bump your food up and expect your metabolism to take off without you actually like sticking to a rigid, solid training plan as well. And just a side note as well, if people are trying to actively improve their performance, then your nutrition strategy should leave you feeling full of energy. It shouldn't leave you with your energy tanked all the time and training is a constant battle. You shouldn't feel like that. If you're looking at things through a performance angle, you should be able to still improve your body composition while performing at a high level, while still recovering well and having a lot of energy. If you're constantly dragging your heels and struggling with the energy to train, then your calories are too low and your nutrients are too low. It's as simple as that. So, thank you very much. If anybody's jumped in, I've tried to look for any questions, but it doesn't look like there is any. So, thank you very much if anybody's managed to watch us through. And I'll pop back on later in the week with another live. I'm trying to sort out a live guest for this week. I've got live guests organised for further down the line. I've got a couple in May, but I'm still trying to really work this out. I'll hopefully get to the point where I've got a live guest every single week without fail, and I will do 1 or 2 lives as well. So if anybody managed to catch any of this, thank you very much for watching. My name's Aaron Snee, and if you head over to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. I'm going to have to get into the habit of saying that at the start, but thank you very much, guys. Cheers.